comes next with your host, Jackie Doucette. Hi, everybody. Today I'm here with Amy White, who has graciously agreed to join me. Amy's a board-certified holistic nutritionist and a functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. Over the past 10 years, she's helped hundreds of private clients and doctor-referred patients go from feeling hangry to healthy. And she's got a program called Hangry to Healthy. And this approach is about creating metabolic balance so that true health and a happy body weight are a natural result of living a normal life. And I think that's a really important thing where you don't have to be thinking all the time, gosh, I need to be on a diet. I shouldn't be eating that. I feel guilty when I eat this. Anyway, Amy's going to tell us all about that sort of thing and how we can have a healthy, happy life without panicking about our nutrition all the time. So Amy, thanks for being with me.
It was my pleasure. I love that you said one of my other things that I'm always saying is like, fear no food. You know, everybody's out there on these different diet tangents, you know, and I admittedly, I am a low sugar nutritionist. So yes, I lean low carb and all that stuff, but that doesn't mean I never eat carbs or that you should never eat carbs. It just means fear no food, understand how food impacts you. And then you'll know you get to make choices. Well, I'm going to eat this thing over here that I know it's going to give me a headache later. I'm going to wake up kind of groggy tomorrow, but I'm going to choose to eat that right now. And then tomorrow I'll just eat the stuff that always makes me feel good. So you need to understand what works for your body so that you don't fear any food.
That's funny you say that because I found out a number of years ago that I'm celiac.
Oh.
And one of the things that I do now when I'm looking at something that I really think would taste great is I put it on a scale of 1 to 10. How willing am I to feel horrible to eat this? Is it that important to me? And that, you know, that's how I gauge it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And in your case, for someone who's celiac, you know, that gauge or that range of 0 to 10 for you is going to be very different than somebody who's gluten sensitive. You know, or then somebody who's not even gluten sensitive. It's going to change, but we all get to make those choices based on what we know about our own body and that impact. Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's actually so funny because that's kind of how I got into this because it was gut health and my daughter is not celiac. But when I had her tested, she was a teenager and the gastro doctor did the scope and the whole bit. And they said, oh, she's so fine. She's totally fine. She doesn't have any reflux. Her esophagus is beautiful. And we've been hearing she had reflux since she was an infant. And anyway, they said her small intestine's red and inflamed. And then they said, but that's fine. And they left. And I was like,
that's not fine.
And so having then, that was my introduction into like food and nutrition and then doing my own research and going, oh, if we don't do something, she could, you know, really ruin that small intestinal villi and end up with more of a celiac. So we ended up having to clean up her diet. And yeah, she's very, very gluten sensitive to this day, but not to the level that you're at.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, very, very rarely do I come across something that's going to be a 10 for me and I'm going to eat it no matter what. It's, you know, it doesn't happen.
No, I can't imagine. For some, it's so interesting working with people because the people that actually have food sensitivities of some sort they're so much better at creating boundaries than those that don't have obvious symptoms. So they're like, well, I'll eat the bread or I'll eat this. And you know what, maybe they don't feel great. Maybe they get headaches. Maybe they get depressed or there's anxiety. Their stress goes way up, but they don't attribute that to what they were eating. The people that have gastrointestinal issues, it's black and white to them. Whereas the people that have maybe skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, that kind of stuff. And, you know, maybe they just have like stinky body odor, but they don't think of that as being related to what they're eating. So it's interesting. It's kind of a little bit harder to get those people to tune in and go, actually, you really shouldn't feel the way you feel. It's common, or it's common. It's not normal, but they haven't made those connections.
Well, and that's the way that I was. I just assumed all my adult life that everybody felt miserable halfway through the day. And, you know, that's just normal. They're better at hiding it than I am.
Right.
Then I discovered people don't feel miserable all day long. It's like, holy cow.
Right. And then nobody remembers what good or great feels like because they're so used to living this normal of like all these weird conditions. That's normal. And they don't remember. So the good part is when people start to feel good and then they're like, but I really want to go out and have this whatever thing. And I haven't had bread or this in so long. And I'm like, do it. I'm like, go for it. Enjoy it. And then I want the data. You're always collecting data. It's all about the data. Don't fear the food. Don't beat yourself up. Collect the data and let's see how it went. And often once they realize what good feels like and then they eat something and they don't feel good anymore, they're like, that is unacceptable.
Yep. So let's start with a little bit about your background. How did you end up being a holistic nutritionist, for example?
So this thing with my daughter,
It
got me researching and reading and trying to figure all this out on my own. And then I got to a point where I ran out of things to read. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I'm out of things to read. I'm going to need to go to school because they will give me a reading list. And he's like, okay. And so I was in Chicago at the time. And so I started looking at the local universities because I was surrounded and I was looking at the dietetics registered nutrition dietetics programs. And I got the syllabuses and I read through them and I realized everything I was reading was exactly the opposite of what I now believed. I was just like, this is what we used to do. And this doesn't feel right to me anymore. And I was confused because I was like, well, what do you do? And so somehow the word holistic nutrition crossed my path. You know how you throw things into the universe and then boom, something will come back. And I was like, what's that? So then I looked that up and I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. It's all about food and how it impacts the body and all the, nutrients and whatever. And so I researched schools and I was able to fortunately find an online program at a university called Hawthorne University, which is an accredited holistic nutrition school. And I did that. And thank goodness, because we moved to California halfway. So I was able to just continue doing what I was doing, even though we moved. But that's kind of what got me in there. Once I realized that food was magic. So with my daughter's gut, that was a slower process to get her gut fixed, but it was pretty quick considering. But the thing that was so crazy, as soon as we took some of the offensive foods out of her diet, the things that we thought were definitely inflammatory for her, so gluten being one of them, really gluten was the first thing, her dandruff and her stinky feet that she's had since she was a baby, gone in like a week. Because that's just her body trying to detox, and so there was something offensive and her body was trying to get rid of it. And it was coming out through her skin, which is our biggest detoxification organ. And it was coming out as this dandruff and this really smelly feet. She was 17 at the time. So she did have a little bit of, acne, but nothing unusual. But yeah, as soon as we got that out of her diet, it was like that. I was hooked. I'm like, oh my God, food is magic.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And so
so I did start as gut and autoimmune conditions. That's where I ended. My focus was at the beginning, but I'm now in my mid 50s. And so as I was doing this for my daughter, I was also entering my 40s and I was at a place where my body had shifted and I wasn't comfortable anymore. And I was gaining weight and I was lethargic and tired and craving sugar. And as I was learning, I realized, oh, hold on, wait a second. So to me, I always refer to it as this communication problem. So I was also having a communication problem with my own body. I was using food to tell my body something. I thought I was telling my body, I want to sleep well. I want to be skinny. I don't want to be skinny. I want to be strong. I want to fit into my clothes. I don't want achy feet or an achy body. That's what I thought I was communicating. When in fact, I was saying, we need to add let's hang on to fat. We need to add to our fat mass. We need to sit very quietly on the couch. We need to our stress needs to be really high. So we're alert all the time. That was what I was telling my body with the food I was eating. So once I understood how to communicate, I shifted what I was eating and then everything fell into line. And now one of the reasons I'm here with you is because most of the people I work with are women, also men, but a lot of women, 45 and older, who are getting to that place where their kids are out of the house and they're at this point where they're like, oh, it's my time. They don't feel good. And they're just like, and so I love that when people come to me, everybody has a weight loss goal, even if it's just 5 pounds. Everybody's like, well, if I could lose like 5 pounds, but other people, 50 pounds, 60 pounds, whatever it is. I had people over 100 pounds, but the people that come to me with I want to feel good ahead of, I need to lose this weight. Those are the people that have best success and lose the weight. People that come and are just like, all they're focused on is, I need to lose this weight. They aren't understanding how it works. You have to get healthy and then the weight follows.
Yeah, they're not willing or not ready to accept I have to change what I'm doing if I want to make a difference. Yeah.
Right, because it's not all you're doing. It's about behavior change. Yeah. It's not about cutting your calories until you're like starving. It's about behavior change. You should be able to eat. It's just how you do things is a little different. And quite
finding that a lot of things are changing now because how I eat. I want to have another glass of wine, but there's parts of me that don't enjoy that extra glass of wine. I'm starting to see it show up around my waist.
Yes, for me, it was night sweats and disrupted sleep. The wine was just taking its toll.
Yeah. So if someone comes to you and they're just saying, I think I need to change a little bit, but I'm not really sure where I want to start. I don't want to, they're scared. I don't want to change my whole diet. Don't want to make a whole lifestyle change, but I want to feel better. Can you help them? And what would you do?
Well, in my case, I really feel like, so again, fear no food. So I want everybody to get to a place where they understand what makes them feel good and what doesn't make them feel good, because nobody's going to follow somebody else's plan forever. That's why people yo-yo diet. They dive into something and they give up their autonomy and they're like, I'm going to let you tell me exactly what to do because I'm expecting this result. And they'll do it for a certain amount of time, but then little by little, they start going, well, I really want to do this, or I want to change that. But if they don't understand how their body works and how food is impacting them, those teeny little changes will just send them right back to where they were before they know it. So what I like to do is get everybody started. We start, let's clear the muddy waters. So we're going to get the most common offensive foods out of your diet. And that's going to be grains and sugars. Let's just get it out. Let's get you feeling good. And then from there, we start to build on that and see how you do. And I try to introduce them to ways to, adjust recipes to make things so that they're grain-free, that they don't use natural, we use natural sugar replacements, things like that. And then basically getting you to feel good. And then once you're feeling good and your body's responding the way you expect it to respond, if there's something that you're desperately missing and you want to start adding it back in, then we go, okay, let's start adding things back in and see how you feel. Let's see how it works. Maybe your body can tolerate it, maybe it can't. So this also comes down to your health status. So we evaluate kind of where you are on the spectrum of health. That also helps me identify where maybe it's best to, how strict do we have to be with the grain-free and the sugar-free, depending on the health status, depending on what you're doing and that kind of stuff, and your goals, of course. But ultimately, I do want everyone to start, let's eliminate the inflammatory foods let's see how you feel. And then, so the program that I run people through is 12 weeks, because we start and then we build. And then by the end, they should know how to adjust the plan that we've kind of been working toward, sort of this anti-inflammatory eating on their own, so that it works for them and they can add things back in. So I am low sugar, but at the same time, my weight is, where I like it to be. My energy is great. My sleep is really good. So I'm at the point where I'm like, I actually add more carbs into my diet than I recommend at the beginning of my program, because I'm at a place where I want to start to, include some more whole, real, natural carbohydrates. So I'm talking about maybe a little bit more fruit, some squash, some sweet potato, things like that. I'm not talking about Oreos and graham crackers. And
oh no.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're starting off, this might be kind of scary for some people. If you're taking away all of the things that could be inflammatory, and you're saying you're adding back in fruit and squash and things. So what do you start with what's the ground zero kind of diet look like? What's on the meal plan?
It's all whole real foods. So we're going to focus on non-starchy vegetables. So think of anything that grows above ground, except corn. No corn. Yeah. Lots of animal proteins. So real natural animal proteins, healthy fats. So there's a difference. There's inflammatory fats and there's healthy fats. And unfortunately, vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola, sunflower, safflower, all this sort of industrial seed oils are very inflammatory. So you're really leaning over toward butter, avocado, olives, olive oil, avocado oil, even natural like duck fats and that kind of thing. Those are the kind of fats that your body recognizes and knows how to use. So we lean that way. So I am not probably the right person for vegetarian and vegan. You certainly do that. And I know people that I can introduce you to who are much more suited for you if that's the case. I'm definitely more animal based. I think women in general don't eat enough protein. So we really want to start crowding out the inflammatory foods by eating nutrient dense foods that make us feel very full. But at the same time, one of the things I teach is this idea of bridge foods, because I have a sweet tooth. I'm a total sugar addict. So to tell somebody who really likes their dessert that, oh, you're not having dessert is crazy. That's crazy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to make desserts. And I start with my Treat, Don't Cheat guide, which is 6 recipes there's a cheesecake in there. There's a chocolate walnut torte. There's a chocolate devil food cake, mug cake, a chocolate chip mug cake. So things you can make in a minute just for yourself, a single serving. So it's a variety of things, but it's all grain free. So you're using an almond flour, coconut flour. You're using alternative sweeteners like erythritol or stevia or monk fruit, something like that. Everybody's flavors are going to be, taste buds are different for alternative sweeteners. So I have a whole list of different choices and you can try them and figure out what works for you. But so I call these bridge foods. So I'm like, I want you to, if you need a treat, you need to have a treat, but let's do it in a way that's not going to blow your metabolic balance and cause cravings. So basically every time you eat these treats, you're still balancing your blood sugar and bringing your insulin down. And your every tasty bite is pushing sugar cravings away as opposed to creating more sugar cravings. Within a couple of weeks, typically my clients are like, I'm not even having my safe desserts. I don't crave them anymore. People shift over to sort of more savory than sweet. It's amazing how fast you can come off sugar.
It's funny. When I first discovered that I was celiac, I started looking for gluten-free things everywhere. And you could see all the gluten-free cookies and the gluten-free cakes and the gluten-free whatever in the store. Okay. So I started buying these things. And then after a couple of weeks, I sort of looked at myself and I didn't eat all this stuff before. So why am I eating the gluten-free ones now?
Right.
and it was just automatic. As soon as you tell me I can't have something, that's what I want. And I think it's probably the same for the people that you help in some respects. When you tell them, you've got to try not eating certain things for a little while, those are the things that go into their heads. Well, I've got to have that.
Right. That's so funny you said that. We did the same thing with my daughter. We immediately went to Whole Foods and bought everything that said gluten-free. And then I was like, and I tell people, I don't recommend that. But now, so in the low carb, like you hear like low sugar, the umbrella, you're going to hear low carb, you're going to hear ketogenic or keto. Yeah. And now you go to the store and there's all these foods that say keto. And I'm just like, oh my God, junk is junk, Yep. The occasional piece of junk, yes. But to make that the foundation of your diet, no. I'm on Instagram at The Simplicity of Wellness, and I have a bunch of reels that I made just about this specific topic. But yeah, exactly. It's like, so people think I'm going to go keto and I'm going to eat all my favorite foods, my pizza, my pancakes, my waffles, my cake, and I'm going to get healthy and lose weight. And I'm like, no. That's not how it works. So yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned in your little intro with me before was that you had a client that talks about, three phases of retirement, being go slow, no go. Can you talk a little bit about those and about, how maybe you help people change where they're at?
Yes. So it was fun because I hadn't heard those terms before. And she's like, the 3 stages of retirement. And I'm like, I don't know. Tell me. And so she's like, well, there's the go. So you're retired, you're young, you feel good, you're off, you're running, you're traveling, you're doing all the stuff you've been wanting to do. And then there's the go slow when you're a little bit older, maybe you're still doing it, but not quite as much, or I'm not even entirely, maybe you even know better. I'm not entirely sure how to rate the categories. But then she said, I think the go, no go was like, you're 75 plus or something, and maybe not traveling as much, which cracks me up because my mother-in-law is 89 and this woman is never home. Until COVID, she's in Germany, she's in Finland, she's in England, she's all over the world. She goes to Africa and she works on this school in Africa. Wow. Like, oh my God. So anyway, as far as the 70 plus and the no-go, I'm kind of like, I think the ages may need to be adjusted. Yeah. But she was this woman, is amazing. And she's in her late 50s, I think 57. She's getting ready to retire. And her husband's a personal trainer, super fit. She has now lost over 100 pounds. She's amazing. Wow. But she said, I lost the weight and I want to be go because I'm ready. They love to travel. She's like, but I'm not. She's like, I'm at go slow, if not kind of no go. She's like, it's like what I want and my body aren't matching up. So even though she lost the weight, she was feeling a little bit better than no go. She was kind of more at the go slow. But she's like, but I'm too young to be go slow. She's like, my brain is not go slow. So she had already lost a lot of weight when she started working with me, but she's like, I need to feel good. I need my energy. So again, doing the same exact thing, keeping up with the way she changed her diet, but actually even doing a little bit more. She's like, she learned some things. But yes, her sleep got better. And that's huge. I'm going to push sleep on everything. Oh, sleep.
Yeah. Sleep is huge.
Her sleep got better and her energy started getting better because then she started really understanding because one of the things I teach is how your body burns fuel. So there's, sugars, there's stored sugars, there's fatty acids, which are the fats that come in from your diet. And then there's stored body fat. We all want to burn body fat, but it's a top-down system. So you actually have to burn through the upstream fuels before you can really get in and start burning that body fat. But once you learn how to eat in a way that those fuels are always in a place where there's room for that body fat to come out and be used as fuel, you have endless energy because it's not fleeting. You have tons of fuel. It's I call it your personal pantry. And once you learn how to open that door, it doesn't go away. Sugar is a fleeting fuel. So if you're living as a sugar burner, you go through these dips and peaks and it's exhausting. But once you start being able to burn that body fat, your body's like, I'm good. I got all the fuel I need. And it will, like I tell people, you're going to lose your appetite. Don't be afraid. It's normal. Your body's now playing in your pantry. It's super happy. Doesn't want to talk to you. It will ask you to feed it because it will need the vitamins and minerals. It doesn't need the fuel necessarily, but it needs vitamin and minerals. So it'll be like, hello, can you feed me the cells here where we need something. So as long as you feed it that nutrient dense food, you will end up going 4 or 5 hours between meals because your body it topped up the nutrients and it's got plenty of fuel. But if you grab a bag of potato chips or some French fries, an hour later, you're going to be like, oh, I'm still hungry because your cells didn't actually get what they needed. Your stomach did, and your taste buds did, but not your cells. So anyway, that's what we worked towards. So we wanted her body and her brain to match up so that they were both at go-go. And so I think she's feeling really good and really excited that she doesn't have the brain of a 57-year-old and the body of a 80, somebody who's kind of slowed down in their 80s. And as I said, not everybody in their 80s is slowed down.
And it's so great when you suddenly realize that you've got the energy, you've got the desire and the ability to go and do the things that you've been thinking you wanted to do.
Right. There's nothing worse than getting to this point in our life where we are in control. We have it. It's our time. And then not wanting to just move, just feeling crappy. It's like, that's not okay.
No, exactly. So your program, you said it's a 12-week program. Do you do it as a group or do you do it all individually with every person?
I've been doing this for over 10 years. And so I finally was like, how can I help the most people? Because I was doing it all individually, and it's slower, and I don't feel like maybe you get as much attention, actually, oddly enough, individually. Yep. So I do it as a group program, small group, because I want to make sure everybody does get individual attention. So I do it as a small group program, and it's 12 weeks because a lot of what's going on here, again, is habit change. And so a lot of it comes down to just being able to understand if you're doing it. People always want to do it right. I get a lot of type A's. They want structure. They want to make sure they're doing it right. And so a lot of people have this paralysis because they'll do what what was discussed, because it's a course. So there's 8 modules of information, videos, tons of materials, great, like lots of lists and pictures of food and recipes and all that stuff. But then every week we have live coaching calls, because people will just stop if they think they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
There is no wrong, but they'll get in their head, if I do this wrong, it's going to make things worse. I'm like, you can't do it wrong. You're not going to make things worse, but they need to ask questions and they need to understand. And so I feel like that 12 weeks, well, the reason I settled on 12 weeks was because I've helped a lot of pre-diabetics and type 2 diabetics. And what I have found is in 3 months, they can take their lab work and completely reverse it within 3 months. Yeah. So my pre-diabetics will have labs that their doctor wants to put them on metformin or whatever, and they don't want to do that. So then they'll come to me and they say, I told my doctor I'm going to fix it. I'm like, oh, let's fix it. And then they'll go back to their doctor in 3 months, and their doctor will be like, well, there's nothing to discuss because you are no longer pre-diabetic. And so that's where the 12 weeks came from. But over time, I've realized for anybody, even if they're not pre-diabetic, just that live coaching. And we start, the first 3 modules are all about the food. Then we get into sleep. Then we get into this thing I call thinking on purpose. And this is huge because this is that think, feel, act cycle. So what we think creates a feeling, which creates an action. And this is a lot of times when we're sort of binge eating or mindlessly eating, there's some thought that went through your head that created a feeling. And so we have to sort of start digging into that and start thinking on purpose. And then we get into exercise, we get into fasting, intermittent fasting. And then we get into what I call sort of the last thing, or eating out. How do you manage life on the go? And then I end with some very high level tools that I teach, like how to balance protein to energy, how to use your blood sugar. You can get a blood sugar monitor and test to gauge. We have our internal fuel gauge. So I teach you how to use blood sugar as a fuel gauge. So you can see if you really are hungry or if maybe you're just thinking you're hungry. Yeah. So it's kind of hunger training. So we do that so it's a 12 weeks. But by the end, I feel like people really kind of have a handle on their body and what makes it tick and work.
Awesome. So how do they find you if they want to do this, if they want to get in touch with you? You mentioned your Instagram handle, but.
Yeah, my website's the same, The Simplicity of Wellness.
Okay.
Just simplicityofwellness.com. And then Sam on Facebook, The Simplicity of Wellness on Facebook. And I have a private Facebook group that it's health. I just changed the name of my Facebook group and I can't even remember what I'm calling it. I can't even remember, but everything else leads you to my Facebook, the private Facebook group, if anybody wants to join that. But yeah, so if you go to thesimplicityoфwellness.com, I'm saying that fast, thesimplicityoфwellness.com, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says free call. And you can click onto my calendar and we can do a little quick diet and health review. And if interested in the 12-week program, we can certainly discuss that. If it's something, that, because I don't funnel people into my program if I don't think that it's worth it for them. If it's, if it's too much, if they don't need it, not funneling people in. So we kind of talk about that and see if it's the right thing.
And I guess you've got to make sure that, and they have to make sure that it's something that they really want to do. And they're not going to follow it if it's, if it scares them, or if they, think, oh, I can't do that.
Right.
It's going to take some time.
I give them, they get 3 weeks. And then if they feel like it's a good fit, then that's great. And if they don't, at the end of 3 weeks, they can always just email me and they can bounce out and I refund the money. Because I want us to click, and I want to make sure we're going to be successful. And if they don't feel like they can, or they're enjoying themselves, then they probably won't be successful. So for sure, I give everybody an out of always.
Well, that's nice. 3 weeks. That's a good chance to actually see what it's going to be like and to feel whether you're comfortable there. I think that's great.
Yeah. So they'll get in that group also has that's a very private Facebook group that nobody can join unless you're in my Hangry to Healthy program. So they get 3 weeks of the Facebook group and 3 live coaching calls, as well as interaction with me in the meantime. And then some they get to understand how the video and the support materials work. Yeah. I feel like it gives them a good dose.
Yeah. The thing I look at all the different programs and things that people offer, quite frequently. And I think about it. I think to myself, well, am I willing to give up the things that I'm enjoying right now in order to feel better about myself? And it's always a balancing act. How important is it to feel better? Is it more important than that glass of wine? Is it more important than that butter tart? You never know.
And that's why I feel like the health evaluation is kind of important, or review. So looking at that spectrum of health, because depending on where you are, you have a lot more play. So I have my super therapeutic ketogenic end. So these are people that are, they're metabolically dysfunctional. Then I have my real food ancestral paleo end of that spectrum, so to speak. And the people, so that's my sort of food spectrum. And then the people, depending on where they are on the health spectrum, they're going to be on a different place on that sort of dietary principle spectrum. Maybe they start here, but we're working our way over here. So they have a lot more flexibility in their diet and if they want to have that wine and, so it's going to be different. Somebody who's on the verge of type 2 diabetes versus somebody who's just like, well, I think I could sleep better. It's going to be different. Yeah. Nice. And then of course, somebody who's got weight they really, really want to lose, because metabolically it's dysfunctional for them, versus somebody who's carrying an extra 15 pounds, which really comes down to, I always call it vanity weight. That last 15 to 10 pounds, you can lose it, but you have to really want to lose it because your body's going to fight you, because it's like, we're happy, we're healthy. Yeah.
So that's something you said earlier, that, everybody has, some amount of weight that they're trying to lose. There are people who are on the other end, though, that have always tried to gain weight and they can't do it. And they're not healthy necessarily either. Mm-hmm. Does your program help people that are unhealthy but underweight?
So interesting. And I shouldn't say everyone has a weight loss goal, because I definitely have people in my group who are like, I don't need to lose any weight. And they didn't. They stayed stable. They were good, but they had achy bodies and the other things. They didn't like the composition. Like there was a lean to fat mass issue. So yes, we worked on that. So as far as, I have not had anybody in my group who specifically needed to put on weight. Now, interesting though, because as women get older, we definitely have the ability, my mom, for example, very lean, and I think the word lean is not appropriate, because she's lacking muscle mass. Yes. She's skinny. And so for my mom, it's really important. And I am encouraging her to eat a lot of protein. So yeah, I would say for somebody who's really struggling to get stronger and increase lean muscle mass, because that's our organ of longevity, is that lean muscle. Yeah, it's kind of the same principles. We want to get the garbagey food out. We want to push the nutrient dense food, and especially those proteins and those healthy fats. And then of course, this is a place where exercise is going to be really important, because resistance training of any kind, even if it's yoga, is going to be so important for that lean muscle. So honestly, I can't say because I haven't really worked with anybody that was on that end of the spectrum. I've had men actually who are like, I'm not, same process though with them. I'm like, all right, let's look at, and believe it or not, they're eating less than 100 grams of protein a day. And this is men. And I'm like, okay, we can fix this. And, let's work on something. Yeah. So that's that's how I would approach it. Same thing. Look at the nutrient dense foods. Let's try to crowd out the garbage stuff that's not really doing anything for your body.
Cool. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to have the listeners know about you, about your program, about life in general before we wrap it up?
I guess just at this point, just what I said to you, I'm 54. I sort of went right around my early 40s was when I had mentioned that I hit that place where my body had completely shifted and I was very unhappy about it. I was lucky because I dove in around that time. I had the opportunity, but a lot of the people that I work with, they're getting to that point more like it, their late 40s, early 50s. And I just, having now lived the transition, I don't want people to suffer. I don't want people to feel like their best years are behind them. I've had people in their doctor referred patients in their late 30s tell me, I know my best years are behind me, but is there any way I could have a little more energy? And I was just like, oh my gosh, you're 37, that's insane. So I want people to understand that they really can feel good. You really can feel good. And you actually are in charge of that. There's not a medication or pill that you're going to get from your doctor that's going to do it for you. You have to do it. And it's not horrible, and you get to eat food. It's not about cutting calories and suffering with hunger and feeling deprived of dessert. I like to eat. So I want to make sure everybody that's at least working with me, you're eating. I do run into trouble where I have people who I don't usually look at calories unless I think somebody's not eating enough. And that unfortunately is fairly common. So we have to work up, just not being afraid of calories.
Great. So the big key there then is your best years can still be ahead of you. It's just a matter of taking control.
I 100% believe that. And I have to believe it because that's where I'm headed. It's only getting better. And from where I'm sitting, it has only gotten better. I looked at my husband the other day and I'm like, oh, wouldn't you just hate to be in your 20s again? It was like, I wasn't confident. I didn't believe in myself. It was just, I was always worried what other people thought. And now I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing me. It's all good. If you don't like me, you're not my people.
Exactly. Oh, that's perfect. Well, thanks, Amy. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was really fun.